I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. What's up, guys? We're gonna talk about 5 tips on the technical side of photography that might help you guys get better pictures. Coming up next. So anyway, we're gonna get right into it. So again, these are 5 tips that will help you guys become, or hopefully help out with your photography. Again, this is more on the technical side of things because there is a huge like artistic side of photography that's really subjective. So I'm not gonna say like this picture is better than, you know, this picture is better than this picture for any particular reason. It's just all what you prefer. So for me, these are universal rules that really help your overall photography skills because you understand kind of how the camera works and how it relates to the type of picture you're gonna get. And this might answer some of the questions that I get a lot, because I get a lot of messages from you guys all the time asking like, what lens I use, blah, 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 all that stuff. So anyway, the first thing that I wanna talk about is compression and zoom lenses versus wide lenses. I'm gonna give you an example. This was a video that I did for Daryl Rivera, and he had this vision that he wanted to do this dance video in the dry lake beds here in Vegas. So we went out and we shot this video. This whole video was shot in the exact same location. They didn't move, I moved. And the lens on the camera changed. So on this section of the video you'll see, and I'll just show you guys a freeze frame. So this section of the video you guys will see it was at a 24mm focal length. And now that exact same shot at a 135 focal length. All right, so the big difference that we notice right here is the mountains in the background. So what that should kind of show you is that when you do a lens, a zoom lens, what that does is it doesn't just get you closer to the subject. What the camera does is it actually takes the background and brings it and smashes essentially your picture in. So if you think about a picture, if you're looking at it sideways, which is impossible to do, but if you're thinking about how it works, you're looking at a picture sideways, what it does is it takes the background and it brings it closer to your subject. This also affects things like headshots, portraits, and things like that. So if you're trying to do more of a distorted image, and distorted is the technical word for it, but if you're trying to do an image where maybe they look a little bit less real than what our normal eyes would see, then maybe you want to switch to a wide angle lens because you want that look. But if you're looking for more of like a compressed, really like close background, and maybe more of like what we would see per our eyes, maybe you want to bring in a telephoto lens or a zoom lens to get that look. So that's compression, and that also, just on a side note, and we'll talk about this in another video, but that also affects bokeh or bokeh, whatever you guys want to pronounce it, but that affects that as well. So if you have a camera and you're shooting, let's say a telephoto lens, and you want more of a blurry background, there's a lot of factors in that. And we'll talk about that later, but the factors have to do partially with that zoom among what the next tip is. So we'll get into that now. All right, so tip number 2 is going to be not necessarily always shooting at the lowest aperture your lens lets you. All right, so I know a lot of my friends do some really good photography as well, and they ask me all the time why my pictures look a certain sharpness, or why maybe the images I get, maybe they assume it's the lens, and part of it is the lens, but a huge part of it is also the aperture. So what aperture you're shooting at really affects the sharpness of your images. So for example, if I'm shooting at a 2.8, again, let's take a picture, we look at it this way, we're going to look at it this way again. And it's hard to understand that, but when you start to think about how pictures, what the camera, how it works, it actually works almost as much front to back as it does, you looking at it flat. So we're going to take the picture, we're going to look at it this way, all right? So if you had, let's say, an aperture of 8, f8, okay? For those of you that don't know what aperture is, let me know and I'll do a basics video, but basically if you're shooting at an aperture of f8, you have a greater distance of things that are going to be sharp than if you were to shoot a picture in 1.4. A lot of headshots, you'll see them use wider open apertures like 1.8, f2, 2.8, even 4, because it gives you less focus distance, and so you'll kind of get just the eyes or maybe just the face in focus and everything else kind of falls out of focus. If you're wanting that look, which a lot of people do, and it's an awesome look, I do it all the time, but I'm saying a lot of times that look affects the sharpness of your images. Now the other thing too, and this is where the lens comes into play, is if let's say you're shooting with like a 50mm 1.8 lens. A lot of people have them. I actually went up to the 1.4 when I bought my camera, but which isn't that much different. But if you were to shoot with a 1.8 lens, the 50, and a lot of people that shoot Canon, that's the next thing they buy. They'll buy like a T2i or like a Rebel series, and the next lens they buy is a Canon 1.8. It's a great lens, especially for the value, because it's like 99 bucks. But if you're shooting that lens all the way at 1.8 at like its lowest, you're getting that blurred out background, but you're sacrificing quality. And what I mean by quality is, if I were to take that same image and shoot it with a lens that maybe costs $2,000 or $3,000, that it can handle going down to 1.4 without having things like chromatic aberration. What chromatic aberration is like purple lining around like whites and highlights of the photo. You won't have like as much of a vignette like this. You know what I mean? Like the vignette comes in because the camera is basically, you're pushing the lens to its maximum by shooting at those apertures, and sometimes that degrades your image quality. Some of the stuff you can fix in the computer later, but me, I personally like to use the computer for like intentional things, not necessarily to correct things I could have done. So if you have a lens that shoots at like a 1.4 aperture and you really enjoy shooting at that length, I understand why. You get a really good look out of it, but a lot of times you, just by stopping down, like going from like 1.8 to like, that's a third, but if you were to go from 1.8 to 2.8, you're actually bringing it down to basically its next stop, or its next, whole stop. And if you go to 2.8, you actually will notice an improvement in the image quality. You can like look at all this stuff per test and things like that, but you'll notice an improvement for the image quality. Now I have a lens here. All right, so a couple of things, I just wrapped these, but a couple of things to touch on what we're talking about. For example, I have this 24 to 105 lens. I've heard people crap on this lens, and I actually use it a lot for event photography. If you dislike it, then fine, I understand, but because there's better stuff. But this lens actually does really well if you don't shoot it at f4. If you're shooting at f4, again, it degrades the quality quite a bit, but if you're not shooting it all the way at its base, this is a 24 to 105. You can get this for like 600 bucks. A lot of people have been asking me, like, should I get this lens? And I say, if you're not planning on shooting it at f4 all the time, then yeah, this can be a really good lens, especially for video, because it has image stabilization and things like that. Now, this is an L series lens, but not like the best one. Now, this is a lens that I use a lot, which is also a 24mm, but this goes all the way down to 1.4. And I'm comfortable with using this at 1.4 because the quality of this is better than something like 50mm 1.8, because this is a $1,600 lens at market, and that's part of the reason why. I mean, it sucks that it's that expensive, but that's kind of the nature of photography. If it is really good quality, it's probably going to be pretty expensive. So something like that, you can shoot that at a 1.4. It's not going to be as good as it will be at f8, just like any other lens, but a lot of times you can shoot a cheap lens like, let's say this one, or even like your normal like kit lenses that come with it. You can shoot those at f8, and if you put them on a tripod or something like that, that will actually give you a really, really high quality image, just as long as you're not necessarily always shooting at 1.4 all the time, and that will actually really improve the quality as far as the image goes. Like I said, sometimes you have to shoot at lower apertures, I understand, low light, or if you're going for that really like background bokeh look, but if you can at times throw yourself in a situation where you can shoot at f8, you're going to notice a huge improvement in your image quality. Not necessarily the artistic factor, and the image might not be as good, but you will get a cleaner image at f8 sometimes. So that's tip number 2.